Mark, thanks for joining TITV. We're happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Already this morning, news that you've spent even more money with your big announcement about your new supercomputers. We'll get to that, but to start, you took a huge stake in Scale AI. You have been on a blitz of AI hiring. Why and why now?
Yeah, it's been busy. I think the most exciting thing this year is that we're starting to see early glimpses of self-improvement with the models, which means that developing superintelligence is now in sight. And we just want to make sure that we really strengthen the effort as much as possible to go for it. Our mission with the lab is to deliver personal superintelligence to everyone in the world. So that way, we can put that power in every individual's hand. And I'm really excited about it. It's a different thing than what the other labs are doing. My view is that this is going to be something that is the most important technology in our lives. It's going to underpin how we develop everything at the company, and it's going to affect society very widely. So we just want to make sure that we get the best folks to work on this, from entrepreneurs to researchers to engineers working on the data and infrastructure. And then, of course, we want to back it up with just an absolutely massive amount of compute, which we can support because we have a very strong business model that throws off a lot of capital.
Did you feel like Llama was behind?
I think the field is accelerating. We keep on having goals for where we want to be, and then the field keeps on moving faster than we expect. So, look, I mean, I'm not a person who's ever particularly happy with where we are. I always want to do better. But I think the thing here that I'm very focused on is just the technology that's going to be possible to develop over the next period of time is just, it's going to be super fundamental. And I just want to make sure that we position ourselves as well as possible. I mean, there's this big debate in the industry, which is like, all right, is superintelligence going to be possible in 2 to 3 years and 5 years and 7 years? And I don't think anyone fully knows the answer to that, but I just think that we should bet and act as if it's going to be ready in the next 2 to 3 years. I believe that there's a shot at that. And I think if that's what you believe, then you're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in building up the compute and whatever it takes to build out the strongest team in the industry.
Now, I want to ask, there have been reports of pay packages at $100 million, $200 million. How do you justify that amount of investment for these researchers?
Sure. So, look, I mean, a lot of the specifics that have been reported aren't accurate by themselves, but it is a very hot market. I mean, as you know, and there's a small number of researchers who are just the best, who are in demand by all of the different labs. So I think that, it certainly is quite competitive. What I'd say, I think, to put this in perspective, if you're going to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars on compute and building out multiple gigawatts of clusters, then, it really does make sense to compete super hard and do whatever it takes to get the 50 or 70 or whatever it is, top researchers to build your team. I think that the physics of this is you don't need a massive team to do this. You actually kind of want the smallest group of people who can fit the whole thing in their head. So there's just an absolute premium for the best and most talented people. So it kind of makes sense that the market would be aggressive when you kind of think about it. And that from that perspective, the amount that is being spent to recruit the people is actually still quite small compared to the overall investment in all the compute that we're doing.
There are so many companies in this superintelligence race, from Google to OpenAI, Anthropic. I'm curious how Meta's vision of superintelligence maps with those or doesn't. Many of those companies obviously have large enterprise businesses.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think personal superintelligence is a different vision than what the others are going for. AI, it's kind of like when the internet was first getting to scale. People were like, all right, is the internet going to be for productivity? Is it going to be for entertainment? Or is it going to change how we work at our companies? And the answer is all. And I think the same is going to be true for AI, and there are going to be different companies that focus on different parts of it. So far, I think that, you hear a lot from the other labs around wanting to automate all of the economically productive work in society. And, certainly I think that that economic automation and economic progress, there's a lot of potential there to do great work that's very helpful to a lot of people. But there's another side of this, which is like, what are the things that people care about in their own lives? And some of that is productivity, but a lot of it is is relationships and culture and creativity and having fun and enjoying life. And my guess is that there's a lot of the folks at the other labs kind of talk about, okay, we want to develop this central superintelligence and direct it at grand problems. And I think the reality is that there's a lot of great stuff to do there, and I'm excited about that. And I think when you put personal superintelligence in people's hands, some of what they're going to want to do is directing it at grand problems. But I actually think a lot of what people care about are just relatively simpler things in their lives. And part of our ethos and values have always just been to try to put that power into people's hands directly. And that's what we're going to try to do with personal superintelligence. So it is a bit of a different focus. I think that there's at some level, I think this is also going to shape how we build the company and how we write all the software and all the technology and product. So that'll probably be pretty similar to a lot of the other places. And a lot of the fundamental methods are similar, but I think the products that we're going to build are going to be pretty different, and I think are just going to touch billions of people's lives. I think we're kind of the premier company at developing products and scaling them to billions of people, and we're of course leading in the next generation of computing platforms with the glasses that are doing exceptionally well. And I continue to think that that's going to be the best form factor for AI, because they can see what you see and hear what you hear, and you can talk to them throughout the day. And once we get a display and the holograms in there, it'll be able to generate a UI for you. So I think that there's just going to be this incredible connection between those things.
Picturing my Meta super intelligence glasses companion friend doing things for me. I don't know. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we're gonna reach a point where you're going through the world and you're having conversations. One thought experiment that I like to do is, in almost every conversation that I have, there's like 5 things I want to follow up on. But I almost don't ever follow up on all 5, right? Just because I go do something else. Maybe I'll follow up on 1 if I'm lucky. And I just think like, okay, in the future we're gonna have glasses, and they're gonna be able to, if you want, observe what's going on in your life and be able to go follow up on things for you, and either follow up with you later or give you information in real time in the glasses. And it's almost going to be like, look, if you need vision correction and you don't have glasses, just optical glasses, you're sort of at this cognitive disadvantage. And I think in the future, if you don't have AI glasses, you're basically going to be at a cognitive disadvantage too. So yeah, I mean, that's part of what we're going to do, but we're also very focused on the entertainment, the culture, the kind of personal relationships with people. I think that like having an AI that can help you with that is going to be super valuable. So anyway, there's a ton to do. There's no shortage. And in addition to the direct products, superintelligence is also obviously going to really change how we develop things at the company, and how all of our software development goes. And I think our engineers are just going to be way, way, way more productive than they are now. So I think that's going to be really exciting, and is just something that we really want to focus on, especially the self-improvement loop. We are already seeing glimpses of the models, even based off of Llama 4, improving the Facebook algorithm and other AI systems across the company autonomously. So I mean, I think that's it's pretty exciting to see glimpses of that.
And I know you have to go, but I do want to ask you about your news. First of all, at some point, another time, we'll have to talk about how you name these data centers.
Well, they're titans. I love. I'm a fan of Greek and Roman mythology.
But I want to ask, is there a limit to how much you'll spend on CapEx?
I mean, I think we'll see how the technology trends, and we'll see what the results are. I mean, in running the company, I'm sort of always looking for ways that I can convert capital into a higher quality service for people. And one of the benefits of reinforcement learning is it gives you a venue to potentially convert very large amounts of capital into a better and better service, and potentially likely a better service than other less well-funded or less bold competitors will be able to do. So I view that as a competitive advantage if we can get this to work well. And that's why we are basically all in on this. We're building multiple multi-gigawatt data centers. And we can basically do this all funded from the cash flow of the company. We have a very strong business model that supports this. We have a very strong infrastructure team that is doing novel work to build up data centers. I wanted them to not just take 4 years to build these concrete buildings. So we pioneered this new method where we're basically building up these weatherproof tents and building out the networks and the GPU clusters inside them in order to be able to build them faster. Yeah, they're hurricane-proof tents. And we have people working around the clock on Prometheus and Hyperion, which are our first two Titan clusters that are going to be greater than 1 gigawatt. Hyperion is going to scale to up to 5 gigawatts over the coming years, and I shared this image of it, but it's the size of the site covers a significant portion of the footprint of Manhattan in terms of space. The thing is just massive. You have a large amount of the energy in the and kind of of people's energy in the area that it's getting built going towards constructing it. I think it's great for the community. And it's just these are really exciting projects that you can tell I'm very excited about building them in an innovative way, and I'm very excited that I think we're going to have the largest compute fleet of any company, and focusing on that, on building on being powered by a small and talent dense team means that I think we're going to have by far the most compute per researcher to do leading edge work, and I think it's just going to be really exciting. Big few years coming up.
That was what jumped out at me about your announcement on Threads and Facebook, was you saying you have the capital to do this, which made me think it was maybe a slight jab at those competitors who might have to still raise the capital to build that out. Do you see that as an advantage?
Well, I think it's an advantage. I think it's an advantage, but also, I think a lot has been written recently. I'm obviously spending a lot of time on recruiting, and a lot has been written about money and all that. And like I said before, a lot of the numbers specifically have been inaccurate, but I think it discounts the other key reasons why people are super excited to come work on Meta Superintelligence Labs. And one of the biggest is that you could just have more leverage as a researcher. You have more compute, right? The best researchers basically, like historically, when I was recruiting people to different parts of the company, people are like, okay, what's my scope going to be? And, here people say, I want the fewest number of people reporting to me and the most GPUs. And so having basically the most compute per researcher is definitely a strategic advantage, not just for doing the work, but for attracting the best people. And I actually think that has been underreported as one of the main reasons why people are excited to come do this. The other is just having a clean slate is fun, right? A lot of times people refer to building up the infrastructure for these things. Someone gave me this analogy that it's like building a house. The first one you build for your enemy, the second one you build for your friend, the third one you build for yourself. And I think the ability to start from a clean slate, where you're not just at another company working on some other infrastructure, and you get the opportunity to build a new lab from scratch, is going to be, I think it's just really appealing to a lot of people. So anyhow, yeah, I'm out there very focused on this.
I know we've got to let you go soon, but I have to ask, it was Sun Valley last week. You have Sam Altman of OpenAI there, as well as so many other executives whose team members you have been hiring. Did you get a chance to say hi, and what did you talk about?
Yeah, I think part of the fun of Sun Valley is you run into all your friends and colleagues. So yeah, I saw Sam, said hi. I also saw Dario and saw Sundar and Satya and everyone who's kind of in the space working on this stuff. And look, what would I say? Look, we're building up this new team from scratch, and there's like 5 or 6 places in the world that have a lot of great researchers. Meta, of course, is one of them, and part of what we're doing is pulling over a lot of the key folks into to the new efforts as well. But we're also doing a big recruiting push. So I don't know. We're not trying to target anyone individually. I just I want to make sure that I personally get to know all of the top researchers in the industry. So that way, whether it's now or in the future, if there's a good opportunity to work together, then we can make that happen.
Well, it's the hot AI summer, Mark, and you're at the center of it. So thank you for joining TITV, and we'll be watching. Dara, thanks for joining us on TITV. It's great to see you.
Happy to be here.
So strong results today, nearly 20% growth. And as you've shared, you're really seeing that combination of ride hailing and delivery build a flywheel for the business. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. We're super excited. Ride hailing is what Uber has been known for, and the ride hailing business grew really nicely. Transactions were up 19%, gross bookings were up 18%, profitability was up 22%. But then what we bring, what's special about Uber is that we are both in ride hailing and in delivery, and we're able to bring consumers onto one side of the business and then promote the other side of the business, which really is an advantage that we have over the other players. So about 30% of, for example, Uber Eats' new customers come from our rides business. We've got the Uber One membership program that allows you to save money on riding or on delivery as well. So what you saw with our delivery business is actually gross bookings growth accelerated. We're doing over $20 billion in gross bookings. So usually you don't see businesses of this size accelerate, but the gross bookings actually on our delivery business accelerated, really great profitability. So right now we're very happy about this combination of both working together.
So you also gave an update on autonomous. And I think this is one of the most interesting parts of your business because you're striking a number of partnerships with companies like Waymo, but so many more. Why the eggs in multiple basket approach? Does it have to do with your questioning of whether any one product will take the market? Give us the update on autonomous as you see it today.
Yeah, definitely, Jessica. So I think the one thing that's a little bit counterinstinctive about Uber, and I was actually surprised when I joined, is that we're actually a supply-led business, which is the more drivers we have on the platform, the lower surge we get on the platform, the better reliability. Our average ETA across the world is now 4 minutes. And as prices come down and reliability continues to improve, more people come onto the platform because it's a really easy way of getting around. So just like we are looking to add more human drivers onto the platform, we want to add more robot drivers onto the platform. And really what we want to do is be a catalyst for the entire autonomous ecosystem, so to speak, by sometimes partnering with, sometimes investing in a number of partners. We obviously have the Waymo partnership. We expanded in Austin. We entered into Atlanta, and that's doing really well. But we also have terrific partnerships with WeRide in Abu Dhabi. Again, a nice expansion there with Wave in the UK, AvRide, May Mobility, Baidu, Neuro and Lucid Together, many others. Because as we get more autonomous robot drivers onto our platform becomes more reliable, and as a result, we succeed. So we want the entire autonomous ecosystem to succeed, and I think partnered with Uber, we can drive a lot of growth there.
Do you have any forecasts of sort of where a tipping point might be and when the robot drivers outnumber the drivers, or just how do you think about where you are? I mean, forecasts in this space are notoriously off by decades, but now you're in it. You have partnerships up and running. What's your outlook?
All right, so you just told me how all forecasts are wrong, and you want me to make a forecast?
Absolutely. So I can get you back on.
So I think actually the most challenging part that we're finding in autonomous isn't on the software. And a lot of kind of these larger models and the advent that you see in large language models has an echo in autonomous. And we're seeing the newer software players really accelerate in terms of their time to market. The biggest issue is actually the hardware side and the OEMs. How quickly can you get cars that are affordable? And I would say less than $100,000, for example. Right now, these autonomous cars are really expensive. They've got sensor suites, multiple cameras, LiDAR. They've got, big compute in the back, often with NVIDIA chips. These are really expensive pieces of hardware. And in order to make autonomous commercialize at scale, you need to bring the cost of that hardware down, which is, for example, one of the reasons why we partnered with Lucid. It's going to take, I would say, 2 more generations of vehicles to get to the prices of well under $100,000, at least available in the US. China may be different, or the rest of the world may be different. For example, Apollo, who is part of Baidu, is already producing cars for less than 50,000. But in the US, it'll take 2 generations of cars to get there. That's probably 5 to 6 years to really get started with these lower cost cars, and probably another 5 to 7 years to really scale to be close to the numbers of human drivers out there. So there you go. Another prediction that'll be wrong.
2033, if I did my math. But
something.
and how do you think about the competition from some of these partners? You know, I live in the Bay Area, so I've got my Uber app, I have my Lyft app, and I've got my Waymo app. I mean, how do you consider that in entering into these partnerships, and that these partners are also looking at building their own networks?
It's a way of life. Competition is a way of life for Uber. We've always competed with other networks, but I think that, you know, if you look at our Uber Eats business, I think you're going to see a roadmap to the future. In that, you know, Starbucks has their own app, and they attract consumers to that app, and they want to sell direct. But at the same time, in order to drive the utilization in their stores, they also work with Uber Eats. They work with DoorDash as well. I wish they didn't, but they do work with DoorDash as well. So essentially, I think you're going to see the same thing with autonomous. These are very, very expensive cars. You want to get as many rides as possible, to as many riders as possible into these cars. And that will be possible with Uber as a partner. But it doesn't mean that some of these players, like a Waymo or like a Zoox, aren't also going to build a direct channel. So there's kind of the drama, which is, hey, either you compete or you work together. The fact is that in our ecosystem already in food, we compete and work together. And I think that'll be the same. The same will be true in autonomous.
Got it. I want to ask you about M&A. Obviously, we've been in a period for a couple of years where everyone's put the brakes on big deals. You know, you're in a position of strength. What about going out and gobbling up an Instacart? How do you look at the opportunities?
Well, we just announced a really big acquisition, and that's a buyback of $20 billion of a really cool company.
No regulatory approval required.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't have to pay a premium. So it's pretty cool. So I think what you're going to see is our biggest capital spend is going to be with a buyback, because we think, frankly, it's a really good deal right now. We want to reduce our share count, all the goodness that comes with it. We are going to look at M&A. We bought, for example, Trendyol in Turkey because we think that's going to be a huge growth market. We're already in there with mobility. Now we have mobility and delivery together, which is really strategic. But I think, Jessica, the best way to make sure that you do great deals is not to have to do deals at all. Organic growth for us is really great. Sure, we're going to look around, but at this point, I think the organic path is the most likely path that we're going to take.
What about, I mean, you're so strong in many markets, and also some of your competitors are, you know, really taking steps to compete with you. I'd say, especially in Europe, where we've seen more. What's your view on the European landscape right now?
Well, we've been able to grow organically in Europe. We built our UK business. We're now the number one player there. We're number one in France. We launched in Germany about 5 to 6 years ago, and we're seeing really good product market fit there and terrific growth there. We're number 2 in Spain, but gaining category position. So we've taken the organic path there. And frankly, it's hard to take the organic path. You've got to build in the market. Every single market is different. You've got to train your AI algorithms to work in the streets of Manchester and the streets of Lisbon as well. So it's not a surprise to see some of our competitors buy their way into the European market. The fact that it's high GDP, high average purchase rates, and highly profitable for us. You know, M&A sounds good, but the integration is actually pretty painful. So I actually think for the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to lean into Europe while some of these other players are distracted by all of the stuff that comes with the integration. So I see it as an opportunity. But listen, we take competition seriously. Process, who's bought in, DoorDash, who's bought in. These are big companies. They're worthwhile competitors. And I'm just glad we've been able to build organically.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just, before we let you go, a couple more questions, but I actually want to zoom out. You know, today's results show you really restored, you know, Uber to really impressive growth, and you've been in the role for a while. I'm kind of wondering what you've learned. I mean, what are some of your big lessons that, you know, going through the pandemic and getting to this point sort of stand out at you?
I think for us, it's about product and it's about speed. A lot of the stuff that we build looks easy, but actually the work that our engineers put in, that product people put in, the algorithms that we build, the tuning of these algorithms, we're constantly reinventing ourselves. Every 2 years we build a product and then we replace it and replace it. in the end, it's about the tech and the product and kind of the data science that we have. That is what wins. Obviously, there's a lot that comes around it, marketing, operations. We have to be responsible financially, but it's really the focus on products and engineering that has got us where we are. It's sometimes underappreciated, but it's by far the most important part of the business.
Move fast. And Dara, I do just want to ask, because there is a story today in the Times that is alleging that Uber hasn't been aggressive enough in combating sexual assault through the platform. Do you have anything you'd like to say about the piece?
I think, first I tell you that sexual assault is a problem, across society, obviously. And with Uber, where we're doing 36 million rides a day, that same issue is going to show up on Uber. The fact is, I think as a company, there's no company that has done more to combat this, to be transparent about our safety record. We have now released a number of safety reports laying out exactly what are the issues that we've had. And I think we've innovated on safety like no one else. You can track your ride now. You can reach 911 in an emergency. If we see the Uber go off route, we're going to try to contact you. We have audio recording now for riders and drivers. We now have video recording available. We're absolutely leading in terms of safety, which has led to, if you look at our safety record in our last safety report, we've improved by 44% versus our first one. That's not enough. As long as there's any sexual violence happening on the Uber platform, we're not going to be satisfied. But every single day, we're working to get better. And I think that we're going to keep innovating, and hopefully others can come in behind us. And we're going to be transparent in terms of what we're working on and also what our problems are.
Well, it's a busy day for you, Dara. So we appreciate you being here and giving us the update. And we'll be watching, and especially when it comes to autonomous. I want autonomous everywhere, personally.
So do I.
Thanks for joining us. I am so happy to be here today with the co-founder and CEO of Anduril, Brian Schimpf. Brian, thanks for joining TITV.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, it's been a wild time. I often think when we think about companies in the center of everything in this moment, minus the AI guys, although you're kind of one of those too, it's just been an incredible couple of years for Anduril. I think TITV viewers know that Anduril, founded in 2017 now, is in the defense space, focused specifically on bringing down the cost of weapons and other items used in warfare. And we'll get to maybe later, has been a somewhat controversial company over its history, but I think now clearly at a very important moment. So thank you again, Brian. So I want to start by asking you about the business. I think my colleagues at The Information reported that last year your revenues were over $1 billion, growing quickly. What's happening to growth this year, and where is it coming from?
Yeah, so we're going to see revenue growth over 100% this year. We have biggest area of increase has really been on the production side. So we've started making a lot more systems, fielding a lot more systems. We're scaling the hardware production that we do by, I think, 250%, might actually even be a little higher this year, and expect to see, a nearly similar increase next year as well.
And so let's talk through, every day now there's a headline about autonomous submarines in Australia, autonomous fighter jets. Those might be a little further off. Where is the business now in terms of products and services? And where do you think it'll be in a couple of years?
So when we started off, we worked on a lot of things like border security, which has been a very successful business for us. We've had amazing bipartisan support. It, started under the first Trump administration, grew tremendously under Biden, and continuing to grow going forward. That's been a very mature product for us. On the counter drone side, that's another area where very early on we set out to kind of work on these problems, and has really scaled. Right, we're doing a huge amount of revenue there. We have fielded systems in combat zones. We're seeing regular operational use. So it's been an incredibly successful area. We're producing a ton of surface-to-air munitions, our Roadrunner system. We're seeing a huge amount of scale on that front as well. In the last year, we've kind of moved into a number of different areas as well. So one has been kind of this class of autonomous platforms. So it's this autonomous submarine you referenced that we've been working on with the Royal Australian Navy. That's now moved from a development program into a full operational production program as of just in the last couple of months. We're working with the U.S. Air Force on their collaborative combat aircraft. This is like a full-size fighter jet that flies along with other fighter jets to provide them support, to put them out in front, put it in harm's way so that the manned platforms don't have to be at risk. And this is going incredibly well. We're in development now. We'll be flying in a couple of weeks here. It's moving along at an incredible pace for an aircraft program of this complexity. We've moved into some space capabilities, which is really exciting. And then one of the areas that I'm particularly passionate about is the area of munitions. This is a major strategic deterrence risk for the U.S. You look at Ukraine, just the sheer volume of munitions that are consumed in that fight, I think is indicative of what the world is seeing in terms of what we need to have to deter aggression from our adversaries. And you look at the production that Russia's been able to ramp up on, it is massive and in many ways outproducing all of NATO combined on the capabilities that they're fielding. So this is a major issue, and we've really focused on exactly what you said. We're looking at lower cost, smarter, more autonomous systems, and how can we build the best of modern manufacturing and modern technology and bring it into the defense world and be able to produce these at a huge scale.
So when you talk about some of the tailwinds about getting these new, items into production and also new categories, when the second Trump administration began, its message was clear, certainly to the tech industry, that it was going to cut the red tape. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I think, like all these administrations take time to get settled, right? Appointees take time to get in. They have to figure out what's working and what's not. They've got to clean up things they disagree with, and then make the plan to actually move out and move forward on what the future is. Combine this all with a fairly unprecedented budget structure, reconciliation, all these unique ways that have never occurred before, full year continuing resolutions. Like this is just a very unique operating environment for any administration to be able to operate in. They're really starting to get their feet underneath them. And what we're seeing is, a very clear-eyed focus on where are the problems on industrial base? What do we need to fix that are the kind of key deterrent capabilities that we need to have against our adversaries? And then really driving those hard in terms of get results and get results now. And so I think this is a great thing, right? Like whether that's us or any other performer in the industrial base is exactly what we need to see. A lot of accountability, a lot of focus on the critical problems. And so I've been very bullish on sort of all of those fronts. It feels like the right set of actions to take. As they're getting appointees in, this is going better. There's more people to actually run and lead these programs. And so I've been very optimistic on that. On the cutting red tape and all these pieces, I think the answer is anytime there's been discrete, obvious issues, so that this doesn't make any sense, why are we doing it? We've had a lot of success just flagging those things and driving to resolution on it. So I think it's just very pragmatic at the end of the day, and a focus on results, which is great. That's exactly what we want as a company that's growing fast and just trying to deliver to the warfighter.
How does the government shutdown affect you?
A lot of things slow down. Right. A lot of parts of DoD are still
We're not
essential.
getting Blue Angels in San Francisco.
It's brutal. Everyone has to pay
we'll
their part,
okay.
I suppose.
I worry about the other people. But yes, back to what it means for you.
Yeah. So it's just all the things of just the basic functioning of government. How do you get contracts written, and signed? How do you get all these things executed? It all just stalls. And so, if it stalls for 1, 2, 4 weeks, it'll take, several weeks to get it back online. So it does have a very meaningful impact. This, progress stalls. For us, for the year, we were already in a position that we were pretty okay, right? So for a company like us, we're in a pretty good spot, working a lot of continuing programs. It's fine. The bigger issue is when you're in rapid growth and you need these new things to go. That is very, very painful. And so I think it probably impacts a lot of the newer defense players a lot more than it hits us.
Got it. And what about, we want to shift to the Valley and some of the more techie, startup-y things, but When at this incredibly complicated moment in foreign policy, obviously we've got multiple wars around the world, many of them controversial. I mean, I guess all wars are by definition, but you've worked across many administrations. But how is this moment in particular affecting Anduril, and how do you balance, your business with the values of the U.S. government?
Yeah, so the geopolitical situation is exactly what you said. It is one of the highest periods of regional conflict, and that is frequently, when you look back at World War I, World War II, regional instability started to increase, balkanization increased, the amount people would arm themselves increased because you were entering an unstable world. So there's a lot of precursors. And so that gives us just a lot of fear and pause around, is this going to get better or worse in the near-term period? What we've been seeing is this is a continuation of a trend that is independent of Trump, right? And the way this has played out for us has been, international partners and allies really are looking to say, okay, if I'm going to increase defense spending, one, I want to know that I'm actually going to get the equipment that I'm paying for. The backlog on these orders from countries is massive. So, for example, like the foreign military sales backlog to Taiwan is on the order of $20 billion. So, like 5 to 6 nuclear submarines worth. Like it's.
And this is just how the defense system works. This is like typical.
Very
it
typical.
Takes time. Okay.
You look at you want to buy Patriot missiles. It's a 2 to 3 year production lead time, let alone the backlog of existing orders and the capacity saturation that exists in the system. And everyone needs these. Everyone wants these right now. And so there's a very real fear that even if you place these orders, you commit to the U.S. and you want to have the best equipment, which the U.S. has, then you aren't going to see it in a meaningful time frame. So there's a lot of fear there, and that's driving a lot of interest in ways of how do they tap into local supply chains, have more control over production, really a lot of these sovereignty concerns. When you marry that with, if I'm going to spend a lot of my GDP, I want to see a return in jobs. Like that is a rational thing for a country to want. So we've been seeing just a lot of, kind of shift in how the international partners are viewing this. It's something that we've been very
shift in how they're viewing it. Could you explain, what's the shift you're seeing?
Historically, it was just buy American and it's all going to work out, right? And at a time when you were convinced nobody was going to attack you, shoot any missiles, or you weren't really going to need this stuff, that was all good, right? Like if it takes 5 years, it's all good. Nobody believes they have 5 years to wait right now. And so this desire for speed and the urgency that everyone feels is much, much higher. We see it the most with Pacific countries, particularly Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. There's a lot of feeling of urgency. We see this a lot with the European countries that are sort of closest to Russia, right? Scandinavian countries, Eastern European countries. There is a lot of urgency to solve this problem, and they want results fast. And so there has been a very significant shift in how they kind of view the traditional approach of how they would buy from the U.S. versus sort of where they are today. Like you said, fundamentally, we're a U.S. company, right? We have to be aligned with U.S. policy. We want to be aligned with U.S. policy. And I think, if anything, this period of instability is reminding everyone around the world that the U.S. is the ultimate backstop of global stability. Like that is the key. And they know that those alliances with the U.S. Are important. NATO does not exist without the U.S. There is not the anchor to really drive this otherwise. These other countries play a massive role, but I think this sort of degree of U.S. relationship is very, very important. And the sophisticated policymakers can kind of see through the emotions and the frustrations of the moment of how they feel like they're either being treated well or poorly, and understand what the long arc of this looks like, which is this is only going to work if we have a strong alliance. The U.S. is the backstop for that. There is no credible alternative. And, hard power deterrence is more important than ever to ensure that backstop of stability.
And so if you had a crystal ball 3 years from now, what does the picture look like?
It's hard for me to imagine that there's some deal to be done that gets, Putin believing that force won't work anymore and Xi believing everything's going to be fine and the status quo works. I don't see a world that happens, right? Iran is not going to stay still. They're going to regroup. They're going to retrench. And the view is very much that, the consequences for using force are comparatively low. And that undermining that Western alliance is their best chance of success. It is hard for me to imagine that changes. I think that will look like more regional instability, more, kind of in many ways, you can view Ukraine, Russia as a proxy conflict. I view it as actually China's buttressing the proxy conflict. Where do you think Ukraine is manufacturing 4 million drones? Like, they're not making motors, they're not making batteries. It's all coming from China. There's been no restriction on sales. And so the reality is going to be that this stays quite unstable. It's hard for imagine getting less. And I think the imperative is the U.S. has both the capability to deter these conflicts and the will to show that there are rules and we will enforce them. And that's ultimately which will create deterrence. It will create the space to allow more peaceful diplomatic negotiations to go, because people don't believe that resorting to subterfuge, sabotage, aggressive action, or even full-scale conflict will be an effective strategy.
Yeah, it seems likely. Okay, well, shifting gears slightly. Anduril, you're a VC-backed company. No one thought, kind of, plus, but yes. I mean, I think it's been so interesting out here in the Valley to see, first just the skepticism towards any kind of hardware. But you've managed to raise a tremendous amount of capital, I think at a, upwards of a $30 billion valuation. I guess my question is, where do you go from here on the capital side? Do you need to raise more money? And where are you going to get it from? What do the public markets look like versus the private markets?
So growing a hardware company at the rate we're growing at turns out to be really expensive. And this isn't even just
doubling revenue, that is not sort of,
it's not easy.
We might expect that of the ChatGPTs of the world or the OpenAIs, doing incredible growth. But it is worth pausing that is fast growth in hardware.
It is very hard to do when you're producing physical things.
But it's also expensive. Maybe this is where you were going, so I shouldn't have interrupted.
And so the reality is you're building a factory 1 to 2 years before you're getting productive utilization out of it. And that's even like partial utilization. You get to full utilization over 3 to 5 years, you're doing pretty good. So you're paying for all that excess capacity up front. Inventory and like all the working capital. It's a concept that very few people in finance even think about anymore. It costs me money to build inventory, to sell it. These are very foreign concepts to most people in the Valley.
Well, now we have the data centers, so they're starting to understand.
They're getting CapEx
concept
again. Yeah, they don't
get CapEx, right?
Yeah, they get CapEx. And so there's a lot of these very foreign, very traditional concepts of what it actually takes to run a business like this. So in reality, those are expensive, and it's a good problem to have, right? Like we're doing well. Our business is succeeding. We're scaling very fast. Customers are demanding the products we have. They're having great operational success. But it costs money. So will we raise more? I think we will. In terms of where
are you profitable?
We are not profitable yet, right? Again, growing fast, very, very expensive. Yep. If we wanted to grow at 20% or 10% a year, I'm sure we could be profitable very fast, but that's not what we're doing here. Where this capital comes from, my view of this is there's been a tremendous amount of demand flowing into the private, kind of growth stage funds. There's a lot of interest from, kind of traditionally public investors crossing over. Most of the mutual funds now cross over into those growth stage funds. And whether they're just directly investing or they're providing capital into other VCs, there's just a lot of capital flowing around there. And I think the belief is that the private market returns will look a lot like the public market returns have looked like for the last 10 years. The concentration in return is very high on the top 10 companies. And so
if they go public, I guess we could do secondaries forever.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like and I feel like Anduril will be eventually a public company. Is that how you think about it?
I think we will. But the benefit of this like amazing capital market structure that exists in the US is you have all the optionality in the world to make the most effective business you can, right? And we are not constrained into making suboptimal decisions. We can choose the timing that actually makes sense. And for us, our belief is we're going great. We have access to capital. We can provide liquidity to investors and employees. The demand is sufficiently high that this works out great. And so we're not in a rush at all. But I think when we prove, kind of beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can scale, we've got factories that produce, our core business model is working again and again and again beyond the like handful of places we've proved it to date. That will be trivial easy to go public at that point. But we're not in a rush, and we don't need the.
I like that.
Yeah, it's just we don't need the distraction. We don't need the
Is there a
volatility.
benefit? Like, is it easier to get contracts if you're a public company? Or I imagine in theory, you guys might face some restrictions because of the categories you're in about the, for instance, sovereign wealth is maybe a type of money. I don't know if there are any sovereign wealth investors in Anduril, but I don't even know if that would be allowed under the law. Probably not.
Yeah, there's straightforward restrictions on who can own you and what percentage. It's pretty simple. It's formula. And we're big enough now that, getting 5 to 10% of the company, it's really expensive. So the, there isn't 5 to 10% float sitting out there. You can't get it. So I think these are pretty simple things for us from the compliance side. From the, kind of perception side, I think it kind of cuts both ways. So, I think historically the view had been, you're not playing in the big leagues unless you're a public company. And I don't think that's the case anymore. And in fact, the message has been so consistent from the traditional players in the space that their Wall Street incentives are preventing them from investing. And by that, they are dividend stocks where they have accumulated a set of investors who expect a very consistent dividend. Heavy reinvestment, heavy risk-taking is not something that they have sold the investors on, right? And so the predictability of dividends becomes the primary driving factor of how can they deploy their own capital into investing for growth. They're not growth stocks, right? They're growing at 3 to 5% per year. And so so it is a different class of investor. And I think the message of why haven't they increased capacity on these things, why aren't they investing, is, I think, to their credit, it's like unclear the return is there because they historically haven't seen the return on investment from these things. Like, there's a lot of reasons for that. But then there's also a degree of shifting blame on this, which is, I can't do it. My hands are tied by the investors. And I think that is true. I think that has created a situation where there's a lot more skepticism of short-term incentives of the public markets. I don't believe it has to be that way, right? Like, if you are a growth stock and showing that when I invest capital, I get a good return on it, I'm pretty sure the investors are good to go with that, right? And they've overly focused.
There have been plenty of examples of that.
Yeah, you get great credit for investing in growth, turns out.
Okay, before we wrap, 2 short things. You mentioned space. Is SpaceX a competitor? What do you make of SpaceX being actually a private and very successful company with a lot of government business?
Unlike a lot of people, we're not stupid and don't compete with SpaceX. This is like the stupidest thing you could do. Like, why would you do that? Like, it's very hard.
There are a few people who are.
And I'm like, you're probably going to lose. Like, it's just betting against Elon is like, this like a really like historically stupid strategy. So why would you do that? And so, no, we don't do the things SpaceX does. We're not doing launch. We're not making Starlink, right? Like, we're not doing those things. We're working on a lot more of the DoD specific mission sets, right? So this is, really thinking about the future of how does space become more of a warfighting domain, right? Like, the Chinese, the Russians have demonstrated the ability, and this has been reported in multiple cases around adversarial things they are doing in space. And so the satellites going around other satellites, potentially interfering with them, hypersonics, like these orbital bombardment systems, they call them, that go around the world and then land in a specific place. Like, these are very serious threats and very serious issues. The DoD is looking at how do I counter those? And then what are the capabilities I need to deter these things as well, to show that I can hold them at risk. So they should not mess with us either, right? And so these are the kind of categories of areas in space that we're really focused on, the very, kind of defense-specific areas that, we're uniquely going to go after, and really fit in the mission of what we're trying to do.
Okay, well, I think space wars and space warfare might be a great place to end it, Brian. Talk about not looking 3 years ahead. Who knows? But, well, thank you so much for joining us, for covering so much ground. And it'll be very interesting to see how Anduril grows and develops in the coming years. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Vinod, welcome to TITV. It's great to have you here.
Well, it's always exciting to be here.
So before we get started, I just want to set the stage a little bit because our subscribers at The Information know your career very well. They will know that you don't consider yourself as much of a venture capitalist as you do a venture assistant. They will know that you believe that AI is going to replace 80% of jobs in the long run. And they will also know that you are a steadfast optimist, and one of the guiding mantras in your career has been that skeptics never did the impossible. And so with all that in mind, I want to zoom in on that third point, because it feels like right now, even for people who are very bullish on AI, the technology, there is enough reason to be at least somewhat skeptical on AI, the business. And so where I want to start the conversation is, Vinod, is there anything that you are skeptical about right now?
Well, to start with, I think if you're going to do something significant, you're going to have to be an optimist, but not only just an optimist, a knowledgeable optimist. There's too many skeptics who live in the past and will extrapolate the past to invent the future. That's a bad thing to do. Inventing the future you want is the right way, and optimism is key to that. Having said that, I think the one thing I don't know, and there's things I can reasonably project and things I can be uncertain about. The thing I'm uncertain about is timing of various breakthroughs that we expect to see in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Almost certainly, it's easier to predict AI in 2035 and probably 2030 than it is to predict it today and what will happen next year.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm not skeptical, but I'm less certain about the pace of development of certain capabilities that are essential to expanding use of AI.
Right. Well, let's talk about the current state of play. I want to get a little bit more granular here for a moment. One of the topics that has been talked about a lot in our coverage are the margins that a lot of these companies have on their AI products, whether it's cloud services or even AI application companies. And one of the challenges that we've highlighted in our coverage is that margins are slim right now, and companies are finding ways to expand them. How do you think this goes in the long run?
I think the way to look at margins is when AI is a substantial business. Yes, it's large business, tens of billions of dollars, but it's not hundreds of billions of dollars. And so the question to ask is, where will margins stabilize? I think some of it depends on R&D breakthroughs by the various companies and knowing who gets what breakthrough, which is, as I said, uncertain with respect to who and timing. I'm pretty optimistic about what OpenAI is doing. I do think if you provide value and you have differentiated models, you will have good margins. Look, at the pace at which pricing is declining, both in supplying inferencing to the AI companies and the price at which things are sold, it's hard to predict the dynamics, but it will settle down. Good returns on capital invested. So I'd be surprised if we don't have healthy increasing margins well into the early 2030s.
And which of the two levers do you think is more likely to get pulled on most? The idea that will costs go down for these chips that are very expensive right now? Or on the flip side, we had one of your founders on the show, Amjad Masad from Replit. He talked about this idea that the models might not get cheaper, but rather he's looking to actually increase his prices to widen his margin. So if you think about what people are willing to pay and then the cost of the chips, which one of those two levers do you think is most likely to widen margin in the next couple of years?
So there's a number of ways in which cost of supplying inference will go down. One, chips will become more economical in per inference. I do think the algorithms will get much better, which means the software will get better in the amount of compute needed per inference. So there's two vectors. You can make the algorithms 10x more efficient over time. I think that will happen. The cost of chips will go down for a given number of inferences. So both those are vectors for cost reduction. The question of pricing on the input side, what customers will pay, will be a function of value. If Amjad, and I love that company and what Amjad is doing, if he keeps adding more and more value, he will be able to charge more. So that's a question of value addition. And that's where there's lots of headroom. When you're taking something that costs, say, a professional, an accounting professional, for example, or a product designer, and you're paying them $100 to $300 an hour, and your cost is $1 to $3 an hour, you have lots of pricing room if you can provide more complete solutions. So I do think price per hour of worker time equivalent will increase pretty dramatically also, as will the decline in costs per input.
Right.
So
how do you square
this business will be healthy starting, let's say, 2030 and beyond, when scale data centers will be in operation.
How do you square that with this matter of enterprise software companies, for example, buyers of enterprise software? I'm talking about businesses in general. They are struggling to find the value right now, at least on an ROI basis, for much of this AI software. I mean, the reason I'm asking the question is because we're talking about raising prices. They're not seeing the value right now. They're very slow to adopt this AI software. So how do you square those two realities right now?
So you have to look at a couple of factors. One, where is value being provided great? In software development, it's absolutely great value. So companies like Replit and Cognition, which we are both investors in, Cursor included, all growing very, very rapidly because they're adding real value. So there are functions in which the product isn't complete or mature, and so you need almost so much hand-holding, the economics break down. I would say another factor that most people haven't considered, most enterprises who are executing AI are doing it with their people who are not qualified to execute. It's like saying, hey, we have a race car and Joe Blow can go drive it, and he's not going to get most of that race car.
So they need to hire different people.
I think they need to take a very different approach. They take an old-line IT software person, say, build an agent for me and hope it works great. It's not the way it's working. So generally, if you take a company like Distill, which is in our portfolio, if they execute a project for a large Fortune 500 company, it goes swimmingly well. If in-house people in the same company execute it, it goes very poorly. So, and each of these, even the in-house people will get better over time. So the third or fourth generation of execution will do better because their people will get trained. But they're really not qualified to operate in this area. While the AI native companies are able to get real value. And they're even able to pick the projects that will be valuable and the projects that are more experimental.
I want to pivot to talking a little bit about some of these circular deals that we've seen happening in the AI sector. I mean, NVIDIA, for instance, has been at the center of some of these circular financing arrangements. Do these concern you at all?
Well, they don't. They do and they don't. It's hard to tell what the details are behind each of these deals. If NVIDIA is financing customers to buy their chips, that could be perfectly reasonable. The question, so there are many, many industries. Look, General Motors finances its cars too.
Right.
When a consumer buys it. It's just a regularized business. The question is hidden in the contracts that are mostly not publicly available. Who's taking on what part of the risk? Is it an enterprise? Are you saying a customer you're financing is viable or not? Are you saying the risk is the customers or their customers if they've done a contract with somebody else to buy X $1 million of inferencing? So where's the risk hidden?
Well,
and contracts is the key question before one can opine. And frankly, most of those risks and who takes what risk is in the fine print and not visible to almost anybody outside.
I take your point on the fine print. I guess what I'm sort of trying to assess here is the systemic risk in the circular financing at large. And of course, I take your point about for example, General Motors financing the purchase of a car. But in a world where you have a chip company financing investing in OpenAI buying cloud compute from Oracle buying chips for NVIDIA. I mean, that is a sort of circular loop that I think a lot of people have sort of raised flags about. Does that whole cycle not raise any flags for you or cause any concern?
Well, I would say I don't care. I don't care for the following reason. If NVIDIA is taking a bad credit risk, that's their problem, right? But if NVIDIA loses $50 or $100 billion, does it kill the company? Probably not. And I suspect Jensen's pretty smart about what credit risks he's taking with which customer. Is Oracle taking a lot larger risk? Possibly. It depends on the details of the contract between NVIDIA and Oracle and OpenAI or other people buying their cloud service. So you have to think of it as traditional business and say, where does the risk lie? If Oracle goes under, for example, because they took the risk of $100 billion spend and didn't get that back, then it's their problem. If Oracle disappears from the scene, do I care? No. I hope they don't. I think the ecosystem will be healthier, but people are selectively taking risks. CoreWeave's taking a lot of risks with the money that belongs to certain lenders to CoreWeave. Do the lenders have risk? I don't know. Does CoreWeave have risk? And Oracle's doing the same thing. It's taking risk, but I don't know the details of these contracts. So,
but broadly speaking, the level of risk that this has become sort of ubiquitous throughout this AI ecosystem, that doesn't concern you at all.
I would say the fundamental notion of will there be more demand for API inference calls doesn't concern me at all.
Right.
Will there be, the fundamental is how many inferencing calls we'll see in 2030 and 2035. That generally doesn't concern me because I believe AI will add a lot of value. Look, the US economy is $15 trillion of labor alone. Just labor costs in the US economy, $15 trillion. If you could replace $5 trillion of that, there's plenty of room for inferencing to be paid for, if you can do that. So again, I said the fundamental is there demand for AI inferencing the next 5 years, the next 10 years? I'm not worried about that.
Right. Who do you think has
defined how clever a contract and who takes on risk if demand is slower or faster to emerge? That's for individual companies. If they did a bad deal, they'll go under. If they didn't, great. If everybody does great, which is possible, that AI just grows so fast that nobody has any risk, great. But I'm not responsible for a lender financing a data center. If they fail, their problem, not mine.
Right.
I care about the innovation ecosystem that drives more API calls in AI.
Who do you think has the best chance of challenging NVIDIA?
Well, obviously, AMD is trying things, ARM is trying things, Broadcom is trying things. NVIDIA is in an unenviable position because they have so many different things they can do in parallel because of the cash flow they have.
Right.
Now, do I know all of Jensen's plans inside and how many different things he's trying? No. In fact, nobody outside really knows when he's going to announce what. My bet is he has a pretty precise roadmap to 2030 and beyond. So hard to say, but
so there's no one company that you are really sort of putting your eggs in here in terms of I think this company is closest on NVIDIA's tail right now.
Well, AMD is doing pretty well by looking at their deals. Broadcom's doing pretty well, but are they gonna grab majority share and be larger than NVIDIA? I wouldn't expect that today. Can they take reasonable share, especially at slightly lower margins? Yes.
And what about all these chip startups that are popping up?
Well, I've seen a lot of specialized chip startups that do one thing. You can run your whole model locally in your shop. Well, that's a market. It's not as large as the data center inferencing market.
Mm-hmm.
So there's many sub-markets that the chip startups can do okay in. But I haven't seen the chip startup that would completely blow everybody away. Now, if you have a sudden breakthrough in photonic chips that can do multiply, accumulate inferencing functions and cut the power consumption by 70% for inferencing, that's entirely possible, even likely, sometime in the next 5 years. And I hope some of those show up because it changed the power equation, how much power we need for AI. Frankly, most of the data center investment can be repurposed with a new kind of chip that gets slotted in.
I want to close.
Photonics is actually pretty promising. I suspect digital semiconductor chips are going to be hard to beat NVIDIA at in a massive way. In specialized segments of the market, you can't beat them.
Right.
But generally, you'd have to have a radical breakthrough in technology. Photonics is one of them. There's a few others. But I see the most promising candidate for an alternative to NVIDIA becoming from photonics, if one can scale it. And photonics typically is hard to scale. Now, we were builders of one of our portfolio companies a long time ago. Infinera built the first photonic chips ever. So I think we understand that space a little bit, but we'll see what comes along.
Right. I want to close by talking about the energy side of the AI equation. You, of course, have been in energy for a long time. You've made big bets on fusion, among many other technologies. And the question that I want to help get your perspective on is this idea that a lot of these energy bets are going to still take years to scale. Meanwhile, the energy demands that AI will need to sort of satisfy, I mean, those demands are right now. And so help us reconcile this idea that we need power now, and it's going to still take several years for many of these new energy technologies to scale.
So the simplest way, very, very short term, to address electricity demand in the country is pricing. Look, this is why the economics of marketplaces work. Prices will go up some as we consume more pricing for data centers. Data centers themselves can get to be aggressive sources of power management. You can consume at certain times of the day for training runs and other times of the day for inferencing. You can dial up the performance or dial down the performance. So data center input of electricity itself is a variable, that'll probably be part of electricity trading. There's some good startups in that area. I think there's a short-term solution, which I think is super hot geothermal. I think we can get to gigawatt scale. If you imagine a couple of extra gigawatts of demand emerging every year, some of it will be met through pricing energy appropriately. Some of it will be met through shorter term projects. Geothermal is one that's much shorter term than, say, fusion. Fission's a possibility, but I think fission, to me, will take the longest, even compared to fusion. But we'll have an array of factors. We'll have more natural gas turbines coming on. We do have companies where you can start with natural gas and switch to hydrogen whenever the economics warrant it. So there's a number of ways to adjust, but it is a non-trivial problem.
And so all these data centers that companies like OpenAI are springing up very quickly. I mean, the simple question I wanted to get your take on is, do we have enough power for these facilities?
Well, first thing to keep in mind, it takes a couple of years to build a data center. You're building a...
But many of them are coming up much faster than that, right?
There's a few hacks, but fundamentally, if you're trying to add a gigawatt of data center, which is about $30 billion of spend, it'll take a couple of years. I don't think that's a 6-month or 12-month or even an 18-month project. Then there's demand-based electricity consumption as a tool. And then I think things like geothermal and other technologies will come along. Some of them will be natural gas fired. I hope there's no more coal facilities. Mainspring installs capacity for data centers that can switch seamlessly from natural gas to hydrogen when you want to go clean. So you can decide how much you want to pay for power and what carbon reduction you want, and increase the carbon reduction over time. So that's one solution. All I'm saying is there's an array of tools, not non-trivial. This will be a serious issue, and policy is trying to address it, but I do think there's many solutions.
Last question for you. You wrote this op-ed for us a couple months ago in the Information. It was called, it was about the bonkers valuations in AI right now. And one of the things that you mentioned in the piece was that you think that venture capital as an asset class is likely to shrink over the coming 10 years. And I wanted to ask you what the repercussions of that are in your mind. The obvious one that I thought was perhaps startups might actually get better because there's less capital to go around and the better ones will get picked. Is that the main repercussion of this, or what are the other repercussions that you see happening?
Let me suggest, I think that op-ed was misinterpreted a little bit. What I said was AI valuations in general are bonkers. For the best companies, they're not bonkers. And if, as a venture capitalist, you have access to those 2, 3, 4% of the startups, there'll be huge wins. You will do well. You will have great returns. The people who are applying money in without having special access to these opportunities, for whatever reason, will suffer. And venture capital as a class, I think broadly, for funds raised in 24 and 25 will have decreasing returns. Returns will lower because they're not getting access to good deals early. They're paying higher prices much later. Some of the robotics valuations are getting bonkers. I would venture to guess 95% of those startups will lose money.
So the take home here is we need special access to deals, essentially, to be successful.
It's more than that. I think I like to say most AI startups will lose money, but more money will be made than lost. That means it'll be highly asymmetric. 2-3% of the startups will account for 85-90% of the valuation by 2035 of market cap of companies. So that asymmetry, which has generally been true in venture capital, but will be significantly more asymmetric in AI because of this valuation wave, I think is the reason we will see average returns decline and the best returns for the top firms will do well, in fact, because AI is such a large opportunity.
Right. Great. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Vinod, thank you so much for being here. That is Vinod Khosla here on TITV. We will have you on the show again very soon. Mike Cannon-Brookes, welcome to TITV. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, man.
So, look, it's been an exciting time for Atlassian. You guys are the deal makers that everyone's watching now with this recent acquisition of the browser company. You know, we talked about this a little bit on the show last week, and we had your head of product on, and he kind of explained a little bit of the rationale. But the thing that I've been so fascinated by is that if you go on Twitter and on some of these blogs and stuff like that, I mean, some people are just confused by it, and people they'll write what they want on the internet. But the tweet that I think sort of encapsulate this is that one person said, "Arc selling off to Atlassian has been the biggest letdown for nerds this year." And there are all sorts of variations like that. So I just want to ask you, I mean, talk to me about why Atlassian bought the browser company.
Sure. We have a very shared vision about where we think browsers are going. Firstly, I don't think anyone has ever really built a browser for knowledge workers, people who live at their laptop, who use SaaS apps all day, every day.
Right.
Arc is the closest that has come. I'm a daily Arc user, have been for many years. We've been an investor in Arc, an investor in the browser company, I should say, Atlassian has for a fair number of years now. And we're big fans of the SaaS ecosystem. There are many, many SaaS apps out there. Atlassian has always had integrations and played well with all of them. And we intend to continue to do so. And the second part of it is obviously the AI disruption that's happening and the ability to change browsers and build a better browser for knowledge workers who live at their laptops, who use SaaS apps all day, every day as part of their job. And I think between the two companies, we have all of the ingredients to give that a really red hot go. And that's what we intend to do.
So when people look at this deal and they say, "Oh, Atlassian is pivoting to consumer," what do you say to that?
I think we've been pretty clear that that is not the case. We have a lot of prosumer tools, tens of millions of people use Trello, use Loom. We have lots of what we call prosumer tools, used by knowledge workers in an individual capacity, and also used inside of companies, small, medium, and large across the world. We are squarely focused on those knowledge worker companies. We have 300,000 customers, from 5-person companies up to 500,000-person companies.
Right.
Always said that we're targeting Fortune 500,000. And so it would be strange for us to go out and target, mums and dads or travelers or shoppers or anything else. So obviously that's not our focus. Nor would I say is that the founding focus of the browser company. They set out to build a browser for knowledge workers, which is what we're all working together to do.
So as you think about sort of the future of collaboration, I mean, you've talked about these knowledge workers, and we had your head of product on the show. He kind of explained to us what a knowledge worker is. And we were sort of joking about it in the newsroom that, hey, I didn't know this, but I am a knowledge worker. And so as you think about these people using these products and maybe some of them being prosumers, I guess, what do you think the future of collaboration looks like 3 to 4 years from now with the advent of AI?
I think it's going to keep changing, right? It's obvious that what AI can do is consume, synthesize, create, rewrite knowledge of all forms, right? We're used to it with text. We're seeing it increasingly with images, with video. Any form of digital information can be used in that way. When we talk about knowledge workers, usually that digital information is related to some sort of a job where there are no resources involved. There's often very little steel, concrete, wood, grass, whatever the resources are.
Right.
And that knowledge is enhanced by AI in massive ways. So the ability to collaborate faster, more efficiently using AI through SaaS apps and browsers is obviously a a major way, the major operating system, I would argue, that most people get to their applications today, whether that's your email, your calendar, your CRM system, your project management system, your knowledge management system, whatever system you're using, you probably spend the majority of time accessing that system through a web browser.
Right. Well, look, I want to pivot to talking about a slightly different topic, which is this idea of the corporate data wars, which is something that we've been so fascinated by here at The Information. We've written about companies like Salesforce and like Atlassian making it harder for some AI platforms to access data. And I want to get your take on it, because this was a story that we wrote. And to quote from one of the stories that we published, the story read, in a document explaining the throttling moves, Atlassian said it had noticed an unusual increase in API usage and was enforcing rate limits to maintain reliable services for both Atlassian customers and partners. So this was a document that was on your website. This was a story that we wrote. And so, I just want to ask you, you provided a statement for the story, but do you see this as a risk to your business, or how should we think about that?
I don't see it as a risk to our business per se. We are always trying to be customer focused. We'd say that at a high level. We've always had rate limits. Sometimes they have been published but not enforced, and other things. And you run into new technologies that can hurt those rate limits and hurt all of your customers collectively. We try to work with all our partners to make sure those limits are sensible. I will point out that our limits are more than quite a lot of our competitors, despite what that article seems to imply. And secondly, other people's limits are basically zero. So if you have a limit that's basically zero, it's not really a limit. Whereas our limits are very generous and perfectly usable, and have been for many, many years. We have always been an extremely open company, and continue to believe that open data and data exchange is incredibly important to the web, to all SaaS applications. We have REST APIs, command line interfaces, MCP servers. We have all sorts of ways to get information in and out of the Atlassian platform. And we have hundreds of commercial partners that we move data to and from on a regular basis.
Right.
So I don't think that's necessarily backed in actually the reality of the company philosophies for 2 decades now.
And talk to me about Rovo. You're building Rovo. It's a really neat tool, and it's going up against some of these other search products that have become popular in the AI ecosystem. How are you building Rovo to be competitive against a company like Glean, for example, that has gotten a lot of traction?
We can argue how much traction is actually there, but we're building the best.
You don't think there's traction?
Oh, there's definitely traction.
Okay.
Just the amount of it is what I would contend with, to be clear.
So you think Rovo is getting more traction than Glean, so to speak?
I would be shocked if that is not the case by quite a long distance.
Okay.
We are.
You're at the center of this. I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. Let me be clear. We have hundreds of thousands of companies that already use our search engine.
Right.
We have built what we believe is the best enterprise search engine out there for the knowledge that your company has. Some of it is with Atlassian products. Some of it is with third-party products in all sorts of different manners. We have many ways to access that knowledge, which we put into the Teamwork Graph. We have, for many years, built a graph that's getting better and better every single year to enable you to access the best knowledge and the connectivity between those knowledge objects, documents, meetings, teams, whatever they are, in chat, via agents, either our agents or other people's agents, to get to it through an MCP server or a REST API, or to build Forge applications that access that data. Our relevance, accuracy, everything else that we have built in search, we would posit as very good, and it's getting extremely good customer reaction, which is the ultimate proof.
Right.
As we said, we now have, in our last earnings call, we passed 2.3 million monthly active users of our AI products, and that's going up about 50% quarter on quarter, and continues to grow really strongly. We've seen a great July and a great August. So I think we're doing very well when it comes to knowledge. That's what our tens of millions of people wake up every day and use the Atlassian cloud platform to get to their knowledge. And they have links to all sorts of other SaaS applications on a continual basis. we can process that knowledge and give it back to them in really, really fantastical ways, which is perfect for what AI needs.
Right. I want to ask you about the opportunity that exists with AI coding tools. I mean, you have coding tools within your umbrella with Bitbucket. You've also got a lot of developers using all of your tools. And so I wondered, I mean, can we expect Atlassian to make a play into the AI coding space?
So we have RovoDev, which is
Okay.
currently sitting on top of the full SWE-bench rankings for writing code. It's about 3 or 4 points ahead of Claude Code, for example.
Okay.
And many, many customers using RovoDev to write software. We have RovoDev agents that run in various forms inside of Jira and Bitbucket to do coding plans, to actually write code for customers.
Got it.
Pull requests, adding security to pull requests, all sorts of different activities.
Right.
You also, though, partner, like if you look at our developers, what's more important is we partner with many existing tools. So our developers use Cursor, our developers use GitHub Copilot. We have many different coding tools that we run in a very large engineering team. And they all have different strengths and weaknesses. We use a fair bit of Claude Code as well. So,
and more what I was getting at is if we could expect any kind of acquisitions or M&A in that space.
Look, it's quite possible. Software teams are a significant part of our customer audience, right? They're one of the teams alongside service teams, broad collaboration teams, and strategy leadership teams that we spend a lot of time thinking about.
Right.
It's a good portion of our customer base. So we're always innovating and creating in that area for sure.
Right. Last question for you, Mike. So, this narrative that AI is coming to eat SaaS companies. I mean, you kind of sit at an interesting intersection here because you have a lot of developers, like you just said. I mean, you have a lot of these AI coding tools that your customer base is starting to use. But you kind of came up in sort of the old school SaaS era. And so I wondered how you think about that question that AI could be coming to eat SaaS or in some cases cannibalize the businesses.
I think it's a lazy take for most people, to be honest. And you have to understand why. SaaS is a delivery mechanism for software. What we do on behalf of our customers is allow them to store business processes, workflows, knowledge of various types, connected to lots of other processes and knowledge, and hopefully gain some sort of business advantage, some collaborative speed through the Atlassian system of work and our cloud platform.
Right.
AI is incredibly supercharging to that. AI is broadly available. These APIs are available, large language models, open source ones, closed source ones, API-driven ones, to every vendor out there. Now, that will require every vendor to think, how can I continue to do the same jobs that I'm doing? We power millions of business processes on a daily basis. Those business processes can probably be enhanced, sped up, made more accurate, higher quality with AI in various places. It's up to us to innovate, to spend our R&D dollars wisely, to put talented teams of designers and engineers on making those applications better.
Right.
There is nothing inherently to do with AI that should mean that SaaS ceases to exist or stops existing. In fact, I think it is most likely to be the opposite, but we'll have to all wait and see how it plays out. If you look at developers, for example, there's a long similar meme that AI is going to destroy software developers. There's going to be far less software developers in the world.
Right.
Take the same thought pattern to say there's going to be far more technology and software created in the world by the same number of developers. I tend to think it's going to be in the latter camp, right? If you look at most of the sensible statements from large CEOs, they are hiring more and more engineers. AI is allowing their businesses to do more, and that is empowering a drive forward. We're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. And it's not going to be all of one or all of the other. There are going to be some SaaS companies that struggle. There are going to be some SaaS companies that profit. We are heavily investing in AI. We have a huge team, world-class, leading model adoption in everything you can see from Rovo to RovoDev to even acquisitions like the browser company and everything in between.
Right.
To help our customers continue to do those jobs that they have turned to us for 2 decades to do better, faster, and quicker than they ever have before.
Right.
I think that's going to deliver amazing economic value to our customers.
And on that note, very quickly before I let you go, of how Atlassian is using AI. I mean, we've seen news that the company has let go of customer service workers that has sort of trickled out over the past few weeks, and there's been a question around whether or not they are being let go because of AI or for some other reason. Can you comment on that at all? Is AI responsible for these people being let go, or what do we think of that?
Again, we've been very clear they are not being let go because of AI.
Right.
The media loves to write that. It's been a whole series of headlines.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask you. That's why I wanted to ask you directly. I mean,
sure.
Okay, so
let me just say, one of our core values is open company, no bullshit. That's a core value of the company and has been for more than 20 years. We were very clear about that. That's a very difficult set of decisions. We are delivering our customer service for many, many reasons. Bug fixes are faster. Our reliability has gone up to well over sort of 4 nines over the last few years, and various other things that mean we get far less customer questions per customer. We have to forecast for where we're going to be. So that's led to the unfortunate situation that we have far more people in customer support and customer service, great people, than we needed. And hence we had to make some hard decisions. We slowed down hiring quite a long time ago. Various other things happened that we were very clear on why and what the reasons were.
Okay.
Now, you might argue that AI led to software development being slightly faster, which has led to the bugs being fixed faster, which has led to higher reliability. It becomes a little hard to say as an ingredient, but to say that they are because of AI is just not true.
And so then how do you think about someone like Mark Benioff coming out and saying, well, we have been able to let go of, or AI has now done the work of 4,000 people, for example? I mean, what do we make of that in the context of a business like yours?
Look, Mark likes to make some grandiose statements. I'll let him defend his own statements. I think there's no doubt that AI is going to improve the productivity and speed that business has done in lots of different ways. Think of it like better electricity. It's a fundamental ingredient to a business. It powers your factories, it powers your data centers, it powers your computers, your lights, your air conditioning, everything else. AI is going to sort of be a little bit like electricity. So it's going to be very hard to say it has done X or it has done Y. There's no doubt it should lead to businesses getting better results, higher quality of output, more quantity of output, more efficient output, to some extent better a volume of technology created, which then becomes another input source to everything else. So I think that's likely to be true. I'll wait to see other people's financial results if their employee counts go down massively. I can tell you we haven't seen any impact as a company that has hundreds of thousands of customers and their users are knowledge workers. And we have, as I said, tens of millions of people that show up every single day. Right. We would see some impact in our expansion rates. So a customer with 100 people on average ends up as 110 or 115 after 1 year and 130 after 2 years. We have such a large data set. What we are not seeing is any change in those historical expansion rates that we've had for many, many years that is anything to do with some sort of great, a pullback due to AI.
And so what I hear you saying is that it's people can come out and say what they want. In your view, it's very hard to correlate that, hey, this headcount reduction or this change in workforce, that was directly attributed to AI. It's very hard to draw that correlation with what I'm hearing you say.
I think there are people who are going to draw that correlation in some areas. I think it's hard to have an industry-wide correlation for that, firstly. But there's no doubt it will lead to businesses being able to do more with less. Now, what they choose to do with that is up to them. Often what that leads to is higher profits or margin for a short period of time.
Right.
More competition when people go and chase those margins.
Right.
And then creating new technologies, new products, new services to fill in that, or adding better features to their existing products and services.
Right.
So I think you're going to see all of these outcomes coming as this great technology flows through, right? From Atlassian's point of view, we are hiring engineers as fast as we ever have,
right,
to try to build great AI technologies that will deliver customer value and accrue value to Atlassian.
And that kind of brings me full circle to the question that we sort of started this conversation with, which is the future of collaboration in the AI era. I mean, in this future where we have AI agents, for example, doing the talking to each other across different platforms and across different tools, what is the role of the corporate employee, or as you call it, the knowledge worker? What is the role of the people in that collaboration then if the agents are doing all the talking?
I think we mistake what agents are going to do. The people are going to have an incredible role in defining what the work is to be done. We have a lot of software programs today. Just rename AI to a software program, an agent. Agents are very powerful. I'm not diminishing the power of what AI is. We're investing very heavily on behalf of our customers in doing so. What I don't see is them just letting agents run wild autonomously and going to do a bunch of work. You are still going to have projects. You're still going to have teams of people. They're going to need to come together with this technology to achieve some sort of outcome. Can they do that outcome with better quality or more quantity or lower time? Yes, absolutely. But if you just treat them as software programs, mobile phones, we didn't think replaced whole categories of people by autonomously going to do things, but we can use them on the go to fill in time and achieve a better efficiency for all sorts of different work, right?
Right.
Wi-Fi on planes, we can do more and more times. Like, there's probably many, many examples of how this works. I don't think the agents talking to the agents will sort of magically come up with all of these solutions. They're still going to need people. Those agents still have a result. They will output a document, a process, an object. A human will have to look at that object, maybe send it off to another agent. Well, what do we do today? I get email that comes through a computerized system. I take that email and I may think about it for a while and I go to another computer system. I may look up some customer details. I may do some other bits and pieces. I call the customer. There is going to be all of this work that still needs to happen. Companies are still going to have teams. They're still going to have projects. They're still going to have goals. They're going to need to achieve them. This is just a great piece of technology to allow them to achieve more of their goals. And I'm a big believer in human creativity, right? Those companies are going to come up with more things that they want to build. They're going to come up with more ways that they want to delight their customers. And they're going to be able to do that faster. It's going to lead to a speeding of competition. So if you're not moving fast enough to adopt these technologies, it's probably going to be a pretty painful world over the next 5 to 10 years. But for those that do, I think they will deliver. We'll all be the beneficiaries of the technologies and products and services that get created.
Great. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us on TITV. It is great to have you. That is Mike Cannon-Brookes, the CEO of Atlassian, and we look forward to having you on more as you look to develop more of these products to come. Thanks for being here.
Bret and Winston, it's great to be here with you. And I'm going to pose a challenge. I'm going to say, let's try to say agentic the least number of times in the next 20 minutes. Okay. It's too early for a drinking game, but we could have a coffee game. But no, I'm just kidding. I'm so excited to be on with both of you because you are two of the leaders of the most closely watched startups for actually having products with traction, a clear focus in the AI space. At the same time, there are so many big questions swirling around about how businesses seize this moment and what's really sustainable. So, Bret, maybe starting with you, you more than probably anyone I know in the Valley have really straddled the big company and small company world. You know both sides well. In your new perch at Sierra, as you're going out to Fortune 500 companies and convincing them to use your customer service platform to build their own agents, what's working? What are you hearing in the marketplace, and how are you getting traction over the last even couple weeks?
Yeah, it's a really fun time in the market. I've never seen anything quite like it. I was in college during the dot-com bubble, but I think it sort of has echoes of that to me, where everyone knows how impactful this technology can be. I think where Winston and I are working in customer service and the legal profession, if you talk to an economist and you ask them, where will AI have an impact, that would be at least in the top 2, 3, along with software engineering, probably. And so we're in this area where I would say demand is not an issue. I think everyone knows that this will have an impact on their business. And the question is, why your product? Why your platform? And you talked about big company and small. There's this kind of adage in enterprise software, best of breed or best of platform. Best of platform means, hey, I've already got an enterprise license agreement with one of the big enterprise software players. I'll just buy it from them. It's easy procurement wise. You probably get a discount because you're buying a bunch of other stuff from them. And then there's best of breed, and it's saying, hey, I want the best solution in this space. We are definitely in a world where best of breed is winning. And the reason for that is the cost of the software is actually relatively modest relative to the business impact, both cost savings and revenue impact that these agents will drive. If you think about run a really large call center, if you can remove 75% of those calls versus 50%, the business impact there is so much greater than the licensing costs. You really want the product to work. If you're thinking about an agent for sales, which is one of the things we also work on, if you can make more sales, that's so valuable, like the marginal cost of that software is actually not something you fixate on. And as a consequence, I think you're seeing this surge of startups right now just because our products are better, candidly, and they work better, and that's what matters right now. But if you fast forward, the way this works, it's like a pendulum, right? And so you'll start to see market leaders come out. I believe Harvey and Sierra will be two of those, and then you'll start to see some consolidation. So I think we're sort of in the pendulum swinging towards best of breed because our products work, and right now impact is what matters. As the market really matures and products working is no longer differentiated as it is really now. I mean, there's so much snake oil out there right now, to be honest with you. Then you start to swing back towards platforms. And the race for Winston and me is we need to become those standard platforms as the pendulum starts swinging back, and I think that's just the evolution of the software industry.
And so I want to sort of same question coming at you, Winston. But Bret, do you mean when the platform swings, you want to be the consolidator, or are you saying you envision that Sierra will be consolidated?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be consolidating. That's the thing is, I think you look back at the birth of the web browser when I mentioned being in college in the dot-com bubble, the new companies then, Amazon, Google, PayPal, are now the incumbents today. And I think that when you saw the mobile phone come out, you had Uber and WhatsApp and DoorDash, all starting around that era. And so I think the opportunity right now for entrepreneurs is this market shift driven by technology and driven by large language models changes the power dynamic between incumbents and insurgents. And that's really exciting for us. And the question is, can you become the next incumbent, which means driving more customer success? And, we're powering hundreds of millions of phone calls and chats this year for everyone from ADT, home security to Ramp. And it's very exciting, but we need to earn that, right? And, I guess let's put it this way, Alta Vista didn't get to write the history books, Google did. And so, and being a first mover matters, being great for a sustained period of time is actually what matters here, and it has to start with the quality of the product. So, I think both Harvey and Sarah are leaders in their respective markets. What really matters are, pace of innovation over the next 5 years and 10 years, and I think that's really what's going to determine who has the privilege of becoming incumbents a decade from now.
Yeah. Well, to you, Winston, I mean, I don't think of the legal profession as the most tech-forward industry out there.
Come on,
very risk averse, very, all of those things. Obviously Harvey has made a splash. How have you done it? And how are you making, to Bret's point about the ROI case, which I think may be a little fuzzier still than he lets on for businesses, but how are you making that to the biggest law firms in the country?
Yeah, so I'd say that the ROI story is definitely different for law firm versus in-house. So for in-house or kind of like large corporates, it's a little bit more obvious, right? Because a lot of the efficiency gains they can make, you can compare that against things that they might be paying alternative legal service providers to do, or kind of like smaller law firms in different countries. So I think the ROI makes a lot more sense there, especially if you're building a workflow that does something specific from start to finish. So like my best example here is, it's a little bit harder to do an ROI for like a general purpose or even a vertical purpose assistant in legal. It's a lot easier if you're building a system that does like merger control guidance, right? Like something that is very specific. You can just see how much this costs versus human labor, or versus, a lawyer doing this in the loop. For law firms, I think they're also starting to think about this a lot, like because of the billable hour, right? Like efficiency gains don't make as much sense. But if you think about
they're kind of a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. But if you actually think about what a lot of law firms want, they actually want like a better leverage model, right? And so like a lot of it is like profits per equity partner, right? And so if you can do more work with actually like less on the bottom of the pyramid, that's good. And I would argue that that's actually good for the junior associates too, because the reality is like most tasks in legal are not fun to do. Right? And if you ask like junior associates, most of them are in the profession because they want to do these, they want to basically go through like 10 years of doing these rote and mundane tasks because they really like what the partners do. Or they really like what they want to go to trial. They want to advise clients on deals. They want to be in the boardroom. And so it's actually an easier sell than you think because from the top, it's okay, we have to do this. And maybe we're going to redesign how we basically, manage our services, how we price things from the partners. And from the bottom, it's, oh, wait, you're telling me that I only have to do the boring part of this job in 5 years for only 1 year, when it used to be that I had to do that for 10 years and slog it out until I get to do what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good pitch. Where would you say like the industry is? I mean, we in this transition, or like what things are starting to tip now that maybe you weren't seeing 6 months ago in terms of adoption?
Yeah, I would say it changes every 3 months almost. And I think like in early 2023, it was, should we adopt anything at all? Like, what should we do? There was a lot of self-build as well for law firms. And then in 2024, and again, this like shifted every like 3 months, every quarter, basically. In 2024, it was a lot more, okay, we have to do something, but should we self-build? Should we buy a platform, a vendor, and then do a combination? And now it's becoming, okay, wait, I think we have to change our entire business model, right? Like a lot of the calls that I get on are a combination of product plus change management, right? In other words, these are the things like we have tons of market data. We work with a bunch of private equity firms and we have all of this market data that is incredibly valuable. Is there a better way for us to actually productionize that, right? And so I think law firms more and more are starting to think about this as how do we become tech-enabled services? But that can be all over the place. It can be for the lower end work that they do at a loss to get like the big LBO or the big merger. Or it could be, yeah, we're, a firm in a different country and we're competing against the giant, international firms. Is there a way that we could actually design how we do M&A differently with technology to compete with them at scale?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So much, really a rethink from the bottom up.
Yeah.
I'm curious for both of you, sort of what's happening to your own costs. I mean, I think this is why, AI is such a tremendous technology to cover because we're seeing the demand. We're seeing the revenue come far faster than certainly other cycles in tech, but so are the costs. Right now, you guys do not develop your own models, I believe, but maybe to you, Bret, first, and then Winston, how are you thinking about, from a product perspective, how to make sure that costs can kind of maybe over time stay in line with the revenue opportunity, and how do models fit into that for you?
Yeah, I think most applied AI companies, and Winston and I have talked a little bit about this, probably shouldn't be building their own models. The pre-training costs of a model, to actually recoup that, given how quickly they depreciate in value, just really requires just huge scale. And as a consequence, I think we'll have a modest number of very, very high scale players with very big distribution channels like ChatGPT, where you can sort of essentially amortize the cost of that training. And it's why you've seen, I think, in the intro, companies like Character and others, like it's hard to sustain a business if you have such high initial costs. Within the applied AI market, it's actually better and easier. And I won't tell you our gross margins. They're quite good, and I think Winston's are too. And it's because you're not selling AI. You're selling, a mergers and acquisitions product in Winston's case, or for ours, you're saying, hey, we can answer your 1-800 number for 1/100th of the cost with twice the CSAT. And you're providing business value, whether that's originating a mortgage or explaining the benefits for a health insurance company, or simple stuff like providing technical support for a Sonos speaker or a Bissell vacuum cleaner. And that is something that you value independent of token costs. And I think this is a little bit the way I think about the market playing out, is you have the frontier and foundation model companies, and they're going to look like, I think, the infrastructure as a service market, where it's really high scale revenue. Margins will always be a question. Differentiation will always be a question. And just like in infrastructure as a service, there is differentiation. There is in the models as well. It's just subtle and constantly changing. Like, oh, this model's better for coding, and this model's better for that. And oh, these are really great voice models. It's a competitive market. I think the agent companies will end up like the software as a service market, where it's primarily bought by business teams, not just technology teams. It's valued according to a business outcome, not according to utilization. You don't buy SaaS based on how many CPU cycles it uses in the database, right? It's just not the way you think about it. And I think that Harvey and Sierra are selling a solution to a problem, not selling AI. And it turns out that these problems were unsolvable with digital technology before AI. So that's the reason we can exist. But how we talk about our value proposition, you talked about Winston transforming the shape of a law firm. We're transforming the shape of customer engagement. And just to make it like numerical, typically, if you call like a cable company on the phone, it probably will cost them like $20 to $30, depending on how long you end up on the phone. Most customers aren't worth $20 to $30, and most interactions certainly aren't worth $20 to $30, which is why it's impossible to talk to companies. Like, there's entire websites devoted to finding people's phone numbers. You bring that to 20 or 30 cents over time, 2 to 3 cents. All of a sudden it changes the game. You can just have more conversations with your customers, and it's going to go from treating these things as a cost center to actually, hey, I can have personalized, multilingual, one-to-one conversations with every single one of my customers. And you look at the market like, say, the mobile market, where everyone's fighting for a fixed number of customers, mobile phone plans. The smart companies are going to take advantage of this like step change and say, how can I improve retention, lifetime value, grow subscribers, all these things. And so what we're actually selling is just much deeper than AI. And I like that abstraction layer. And I think it's why I'm so bullish on the applied AI market and the agent market broadly, is because I think this is how most companies want to buy technology. Like, tokens have no bearing on your business, but your cost of your customer experience, the cost of your legal department, the success of that merger certainly do. And that's fundamentally what we're selling.
I would also even say that, oh, God.
No, go ahead, Winston.
I was going to say, other than efficiency too, if you think about a lot of these tasks, and I think I've seen companies like Bret and us and other companies too, a lot of this pitch is beyond efficiency. So if you think about like a merger, like most reasons deals die is because of speed problems, right? They get like massively delayed. And so my point is that a lot of the value that you're going to start providing is actually not just how much did this cost before and versus, and now it's X divided by 3 or whatever. But it's actually, oh, there's a higher chance that this actually goes through, right? Or if you're pre-processing a bunch of documents for like an internal investigation, that makes it so that the outcome of that internal investigation, you probably have a better sense of like what happened at the company. And so my point is, I think that in the next couple of years, we'll see a lot more than just efficiency arguments. We'll say, oh, wait, this actually had like a lot of business impact that had nothing to do with cost savings.
You also, though, it sounds like you're both banking on the fact there'll be enough competition on the foundation model layer that those prices aren't going to go through the roof. I mean, is that because all of those companies, and as you know, Bret, face incredible pressure to make their lines cross as well. But is it just you think that there'll be enough options out there that that's not something that will become a major challenge for this agent software layer?
I do. I also think there's not one foundation model that people should use. I think they're becoming more purpose-built. It's a little bit like almost like the data storage market. You have transactional databases, you have columnar data stores for analytics, you have things like S3 and open source, and almost every one of those has an open source competitor and a proprietary one. We're seeing very similar things. We probably do on the order of 20 inference calls for every message or sentence you say to one of our agents, which most people surprises most people. Not all of it is rocket science. It's not all GPT-5 high reasoning mode. It's really simple things like, oh, is that a television in the background, or is that you speaking? Or you're on the side of the road for a roadside assistance case, and there's a car horn. Was that someone interrupting the agent, or should I keep talking? And you don't need AGI to determine that it's a car horn. And I think that's I think how the model matures. I really think for an applied AI company, not OpenAI, but for an applied AI company, these are reusable pieces of infrastructure, and you'll do a price performance quality analysis on what's right for the task. And I think a great sort of full stack applied AI company will be really good at absorbing these new models as they come out, picking the right purpose-built model for the task. And to some degree, part of the reason I don't think training, or certainly pre-training models, fine-tuning, I think may also wane in importance over time. That's a whole different conversation. But, I think that, you should like take advantage of the wave of the market of this investment in these foundation models. And it won't always just be the frontier. It might be sort of this boring, important task where you can use a really low parameter count model that's fast and cheap. And that's great. And that's how you're going to sort of build the supply chain of technology to make these agents shine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to zoom out a bit, but first on pricing, Bret, I think you've talked a little bit about maybe pay per outcome or usage pricing, and it actually reminded me of Quip if we go way back when. But I feel like before you were at Salesforce in the Quip software land, this was a model you were also thinking about. But talk a bit about how pricing might evolve in the space.
So at Zero, we charge our customers when the agent autonomously completes the task, whether that's making the sale, solving the customer's customer service problem. If we have to transfer to a person, it's free. And we do that because it really aligns our interests with our customers. It's a great way to consume this software. I'm excited about it broadly. I think this is where the industry will go. If you look at, 1998 to 2002, when the sort of cloud market emerged, you had the emergence of, hey, you can run this software in the browser, and you had software as a service where, you subscribed to it rather than paying it for a perpetual license. Those two went hand in hand because they sort of had to. If you're running, everyone has the same version of the software in the browser, how do you pay for innovation? So you needed a different model than buying, Windows 98 and then Windows 2000. You had to say, okay, let's just change the model. But it also really aligns software vendors with customers because, you could stop subscribing to it. So it created this sense, that's where customer success, the profession, was created by, I think, Salesforce. But, you ended up sort of changing in a really structural way the relationship between vendors and companies. I think with agents, because software isn't just a productivity boost anymore, it actually can complete a task. For tasks like sales, you pay people on commission, because when you can actually measure the impact of a task, the best way to align incentives is to pay for that job well done. And I think we're in a position with customer experience where you kind of know that it was a job well done. Did you solve the problem? Did you make the sale? And so we just love charging for that. And I think it will disrupt the industry, but be really, really good for companies, because just imagine the return. You talked about ROI. It's so easy with Sierra to know you're getting an ROI because you only pay us when we give you a return on your investment. And I think that is the right way to charge for agents if you can. Not all agents have quite so measurable of outcomes as we have, and we're just in an industry where it works really well.
So I want to ask you both. I think there's been a lot of talk now. Okay, we're going to have all these agents. They're going to need to interoperate somehow. They might need access to things stored in other places to do that. We've seen companies like Salesforce and others try and, just kind of also for platforms, you can't have agents pinging you all day long either. So there's a real tension, I think, in how, if we fast forward, what this software layer will look like. I'm curious for either of you how you sort of think about that. And are there analogies like the app economy, like something else that can help people kind of grok what a very agent-heavy future looks like?
Yeah, I think you can think about a lot of these agentic systems as what is the type of task that they're trying to solve. And then if you have like a layered task, you're just combining tons of them together, right? And so my point here is, if you have a task like a merger and acquisition, right, that is going to have all of these different agents that are doing different types of research, different types of diligence. They're looking at, some web browsing, different types of external data, internal data, et cetera. But then you're also going to have probably a bunch of agents that are coming in there that are investment banking related, right? Like if you think about some of these very large
PR
tasks,
agents, imagine that.
yeah, it's across all these domains, right? Yeah, you're going to be inundated. But my point is, does that end up being a bunch of different companies, or do the companies that solve one portion of this or like one vertical is it easier for them to tap on agents that solve the other parts of the vertical? And I think that's the question. And that's, to me, like where this ends up. Is that it for the very simple tasks, maybe you'll just have one. But for the really complex things that are more like project-based, or like if you take a group of humans to do the task today, right? And they're from different verticals, who owns that? Is it a bunch of different companies that own each vertical? Or is it actually one company that somehow figures out how to get into multiple?
And doesn't that advantage the big guys? And maybe Bret, back to you. I mean, you worked at Google, you worked at Salesforce, right? To be the Google, not the Alta Vista, right? To be the platform, not I forgot what your other analogy was, but like, how do you, and yes, it's having a great product, but can you unpack that a little bit of like, how are you going up against the Googles and the Salesforces today, and in a way that, you think the gap will widen 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, it's hard to predict, to be honest with you. Even as someone, as you joked, sort of, I'm probably as much in the middle of this as anyone. It's really hard to predict the future of the software industry. I mean, broadly, thanks to coding agents, just the cost of making software is going down. And I think if you just, project forward, the marginal cost of new software will go down by a lot. We haven't really experienced a world where there hasn't been a scarcity of skilled software developers, and we will. And I just don't know what that means to our industry as a whole. Similarly, you've always had these sort of core systems of record, like ERP systems at companies, and they are both databases, but also a bunch of web-based software that are like workflows on top. And a lot of people think, okay, agents will be doing a lot of those workflows. So what does that mean for the company? How much of their value is in the database? How much was in the workflow? And you'll end up with a sort of natural tension of people trying to hold on to the value that they had, plus, companies. Fundamentally, I think it's not any company's data. It's like not any software company's data. It's your client's data, right? So I think that's a non-issue. I don't think we as companies have any rights to this data. It's our customers. But I think how it plays out, like what's more important, sort of the agents running on top, or the systems that are sort of are interacting with. And I think the way it's going to play out is everyone who is sort of a system of record today will be fighting to make agents. All the agents will be sort of coming from the other direction. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I think it really comes down to leadership and execution. If you look at how many of the companies that existed prior to the cloud made the transition successfully, some did. Microsoft and Adobe did a very good job. There are others like Siebel Systems that did not. And so, I don't think there's like maybe a first principles reason why for any of these, incumbents, they can't succeed here, but it'll require business model changes. It might require other things. And then you'll have new entrants like Harvey and Sierra making the case for, why, we should be sort of the gravitational center of that new world. But I think it all comes down to really driving success for customers at scale for a sustained period of time. And, I think you could end up, the reason I brought up sort of Alta Vista and Google, for those of you as old as me, Alta Vista was there first, and they didn't capitalize on that. And Google made, a better mousetrap and then ended up with a better business model as well, especially relative to companies like Inktomi and others. So you end up where, I think we're in the early innings, candidly. And I think, if we have the privilege of sitting here with you, 5 or 10 years from now and being leaders, it will be because, as Winston said, every 3 months the market changes. Did we react to those changes with intelligence and good judgment? Did we continue to drive so much success that when companies say, who am I going to build my IT strategy around, it starts with us and not, one of the existing enterprise license agreements? And we have to earn that, candidly. But if you look at the history of technology, as I mentioned, when the web browser came out, when the mobile phone came out, new, sustainable, durable companies came out as well. And so I think it's inevitable. I hope and I believe, because I like Winston a lot, we will be 2 of those companies, but we have to earn it. I think there will be a number of them. I think that these technology waves essentially sort of fertilize the ground of Silicon Valley for new companies to grow. And I think it's a really exciting time to be a part of it.
And so before we wrap, too, just zooming out even further, I mean, there's been some discussion lately just about the pace of AI breakthroughs, sort of big picture. The models are getting better. Obviously, we're at the beginning of the business adoption curve. GPT-5 had some fans, some muted reactions as well. Bret and Winston, like, where do you, are we, when it just comes to AI and superintelligence and AGI, like, are we starting to see slowing gains at that level? Or how do you see sort of the technology breakthrough piece of this revolution progressing?
Yeah, I guess my one answer to this is actually a lot of the problem here is just how do you get all of the correct context into like an environment or whatever it is to the model, right? Or to the agentic system. And so you basically have like, how do you get all the context there, which a lot is a product problem. And then how do you get the right answer? And that's more the AI problem once you have all the correct context. I actually think the AI problem for way more use cases is actually solved. In other words, like the IQ, like the raw IQ reasoning ability of these models is already 10 times, 100 times what the current penetration is in that vertical, right? So like specifically for legal, the reasoning ability is already there. The problem is you have like 500 different sources of context for each problem, right? And how do you make sure that the models are, one, have access to that context, but two, are actually using that context in the correct order? And a lot of this isn't like a reasoning problem. It's there is a certain way that a private equity firm does an LBO, right? And for them, maybe it's reason, but for some folks, right, it's not like randomly the models learn how to do this. This is a certain way that they do it. And so my point here is, I think we will see way more breakthroughs. It wouldn't actually matter. Like either way, there's just so much more that you can develop in these verticals than we have so far. And the blocker isn't the reasoning ability of the models.
Bret, what do you think? Is GPT's IQ plateauing?
I'm very optimistic on AGI progress. I actually think one thing Winston said, which is actually really subtle and important, is I think we may see a trend. Let's just say you share my optimism about AGI progress. We will get to the point where the previous generation of model was sufficient for a task. I planned my vacation to Europe this summer on ChatGPT. I'm not sure how much more intelligence would have helped. I had a great vacation, no edits, and so I don't think I need more AGI.
But do you know what the super intelligent? No, okay.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe it would have been better. I don't know. But if you talk to someone like one of our software engineers and the coding agents, gosh, we could use a lot more intelligence there. And the difference between Cursor a year ago and Cursor's agent Claude Code Codex today is meaningful, very meaningful. And GPT-5 in particular for coding is much better than the models that preceded it. So I think that, I really view it as like, as these models become increasingly super intelligent in some domains, not everything you do actually impacts those. And I think, a lot of the folks I talked to didn't like GPT-5, and we certainly could have done that rollout better. It was like tone and personality and a lot of things that aren't necessarily correlated with intelligence. It doesn't mean, by the way, we should improve it. And so I think that this goes back to the discussion about lots of different models. I think first we're learning people develop different, I'd say, relationships with these models, and things like tone do matter a lot. Second, if we start working on a model that can find discoveries in math that may not impact, a lot of industries, like as Winston said, it might not impact his leverage buyout product for private equity, which sounds fascinating. So, we might reach sufficient intelligence for different domains at different times. And I think these labs, particularly OpenAI and Anthropic, they're mission driven, right? So like, we're not done till at the finish line, and that finish line doesn't matter to every industrial application equally or every personal interaction equally. And I think that's normal and healthy. And I think that's why, Reid Hoffman talked about the frontier versus foundation model. I really like that distinction because
oh God, more terms
to be at the frontier for everything.
We are at time, gentlemen, but thank you. We can go on, and I hope we get the chance to, because you both are in really interesting positions. And I think there's a lot of ways this trend can go, and you guys have a front row seat. So thanks very much for being on TITV.
Welcome, Julia. It's great to have you.
It's so great to be here, Akash. Thank you.
So I'm excited to talk about some of the announcement you guys made last week. One of the fundamental questions I do have is you guys unveiled QuickSuite. How is QuickSuite different from Q, which is another product that we talked a lot about here at the Information?
Well, QuickSuite really builds on the learning we've gotten from Q for Business, as well as QuickSight, as you also alluded to. And then it really germinated from watching our internal employees and the tools they were using and the needs that they had. And we brought all that together. And as you know better than anyone, right, the space is moving fast. And so our ability to really watch, learn, pivot, and adapt and bring them into a cohesive experience, as we call Amazon Quick Suite, is really the evolution that we're bringing to market this week.
So does Q fit inside Quick Suite, or how does that work?
It's really the next generation. So our Q business customers are being evolved into the Quick Suite application. So it takes over those capabilities. Of course, if you're on Q Business, as we do with any enterprise, we continue to support that. But really, it is the evolution of that, and it will replace it in the fullness of time.
Well, one of our reporters wrote about it last week, and one of the things he mentioned is it felt a little bit more like a rebranding than an introduction of new products. Do you not see it that way?
Well, we bring a lot together that is brand new. For example, we have like industry-leading quick research, which is one of the capabilities in it, where you can go deep, and understand what's happening across a whole industry sector, or put a whole strategy together for you, as an example. But then the entire user experience and the application experience itself is new. And kind of, again, germinated out of watching our internal customers as well as our external customers and bringing those pieces together.
One of the neat parts of Quick Suite is sort of the enterprise search tool and the ability to use this product across all of your other software that you have installed. It's something that we've talked about in the show in the context of fast-growing startups like Glean. One of the challenges that we've written about here at The Information is this idea that some software companies may block or may throttle access to their own to the data that's hosted inside their own programs from AI companies who are looking to access them. This is the whole issue around corporate data wars. I mean, how much of a challenge is that for you right now?
Well, we've had in market our index. It's now part of the Quick Suite again, Quick Index, that is enabling customers, ourselves and others, to tap into things like Salesforce and Slack and third party, and obviously all of the data sitting in AWS, which is where most of the world's data actually sits. So we have access to all of that. But then the new aspect of it as well is also your own personal information, like Microsoft 365, your docs, your PowerPoint, your email. And we don't see, in terms of we're using public APIs, we're working in partnership with these organizations. And so to your point of, we don't see that on the horizon, but understand the concerns.
Understand the concerns. And so, but you're saying that you don't foresee it being an issue, even though it could be one way it goes.
I think we're doing it in partnership with so many of these companies, again, and so many of them are customers and partners with AWS as well. And so very much doing it in partnership with them.
Right. I want to talk about the ROI that some businesses are trying to get out of AI. It's something that has been difficult for some businesses, given that these projects can be expensive, and also you might not know the right ways in which to use the technology. And agents are specifically one area of AI where people have kind of been scratching their heads saying, hey, I'm trying it and it's slow. I mean, I'm not seeing the impact just yet. Are your customers actually seeing ROI, or are these all just sort of pilot projects that they're just playing with the technology right now?
But we've definitely seen the kind of, as people call it, the pilot purgatory, right? And I think that's why we made the learnings we've had, again, that we've been able to watch, learn, pivot with Quick Suite. The getting it up and started is like zero friction, right? So as a user, you already have your data set up to the extent your organizations put that in place. But you can also just immediately bring in, again, your documents, your access to BI dashboards, even information sitting in like Snowflake. And so the user can get moving very, very quickly, which again gets you out of just, I'm stuck in pilot and I'm actually can use it in a real world way, right? These tools get access to all the business data. You're not just trying to work around it, which is usually the problem of getting ROI. So again, just within my own organization, we now run every marketing review using Quick Suite, because the team can pull everything together instantly. We know what kind of insights we're looking for, and then you can put it into a review for all of us to share. So then you're now measuring from an ROI perspective. Okay, if my team now takes half the time to get their business review pulled together, what's the value of that? And their ability to go instead work on another marketing campaign using those insights versus that 2 hours to actually just find the insights.
Right. But as you're talking to customers, I mean, what is the biggest challenge that they have, or what is the biggest factor that is preventing them from spending more on AI right now?
Mostly it is about, it's interesting, it's such an old world problem, but about data silos, right? And that's what slows down the benefit of so many of these tools, is getting access to the right data, bringing it together, making it useful. And so again, one of the things we spent so much time on was Quick Index, making sure that the data silos could be harmonized. And again, take a different approach, right? A lot of the other people in this space are doing it application specific, or data silo specific kind of agentic experiences, where we looked very broadly. Again, taking from our history of being of AWS and a broad set of infrastructure and data systems, that we could bring that forward into the application layer as well, because that's what slows people down, and that's what makes it not as useful, and where the ROI struggles when you can't get access to the right data.
Right. AWS has its own tools to help people develop their own agents. We also saw last week OpenAI unveil a similar tool in that category. What did you make of their release last week?
I think, the agentic space is moving incredibly fast. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimenting and then continuing to evolve. And as you've seen us bring out, Kiro, our agentic IDE for developers, and seeing really, really wonderful success in terms of adoption with developers and what they're doing with it. Now with Quick Suite for all of the employees and users at organization. And then even just today, our new agentic platform called Bedrock Agent Core is in GA. So all the different tools, whether you're a developer, whether you're building out the whole infrastructure for agentic systems, or you're an end user, kind of covering all those different bases.
Right. And one of the other things that we've written about here at The Information is sort of the margin pressure that comes up for cloud providers, given how expensive some of the underlying technology can be for renting out these AI chips. How are you guys seeing any of that margin pressure in your own business?
Our business continues to be quite healthy. And as you see in our earnings, and kind of the way we look at it and report, it continues to be quite steady.
And what about the Trainium chip that you guys have? It's an interest. We were just talking earlier on the segment before you about OpenAI's own ambitions to develop their own chip. It's something that we were waiting for more details on. Of course, Amazon has had this effort going for a long time. Can you talk about the extent to which AWS customers are actually asking to say, hey, we want to use that chip, or we want to use the compute associated with that chip instead of something like NVIDIA, which they might have been used to doing for the last 2-3 years? Are they actually making the ask to transfer right now?
Well, as you said, I think our long-term investment in our own chips, with Trainium being kind of the most current example, is really a wonderful advantage for us, right, from a price performance perspective. And so if you just look at our customers using Bedrock, right, our AI platform, over half of that is powered by Trainium. So over the half of customers of many that are using Bedrock are already using that as well. And then our big investment called Project Rainier, our super AI kind of build out in partnership with Anthropic, also powered largely by Trainium as well. And so I think proof's in the pudding in terms of seeing Trainium pay off and the price performance we can provide. Of course, by the way, we're wonderful partners with NVIDIA. We host more of their chips than anyone, but it's an opportunity for customers to have variations.
Right. And I just wondered if internally the company had a goal in saying, I think I just missed that detail. You said half of Bedrock customers are using
over half of Bedrock is powered by Trainium, right? So
okay.
By definition, then half the customers using Bedrock are powered by Trainium.
Right. Great. Well, Julia, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It was an exciting week of news last week, and it very much is something that we've been interested to see how it plays out. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it. And as you have more news, please come back on the show and tell us more about it. That is Julia White, the Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at AWS here on TITV.